gives me whatever the opposite of cortisol is, whatever Mallory told us in the last session. So it's kind of perfect that Chris was here for Paul Skaggs' session. For those of you who were here at the opening, Paul encouraged us to draw our notes more. And so there we go. You can private message Chris if you're interested in learning more about pickles in the app. Missy and I use it all the time because it's so freaking fun. And you get nice visual representation. I did screenshot all of those things. But now we're going to see with new eyes. Disclaimer, we're going to use the same eyes that you brought to the session. You're just going to like tweak them a bit. We're not passing out eyeballs. That was not on Sked, so you don't get new eyes. I'm sorry if anybody was like, Yardena is not talking to me already. I have crushed her soul and her spirit. But we got Team BYU for you today. Paul Skaggs is a professor there, and Wing James is a student. So holla for the West Coast. And with that, I will give Paul the mic, and we will start refreshing those eyes to see differently. Take it away, Paul.
Okay. I'm going to share here, except I want to share and I've got this meeting is being recorded right in. Okay. So the purpose of this presentation is to kind of inspire you to be curious, to look around, notice things, and to pay attention. Now, I want to say we're going to look at some unexceptional things with an inquisitive point of view. And I have a little disclaimer. My field is industrial design, so it's product development. And so most of the examples and things that I share are kind of leaning toward new product design, but I hope you can take what I talk about and move it into understanding something in your own field here. So here's a quote. Somebody said that creative people are expert noticers. Is that statement true? Anybody have any thoughts on that?
I wish I were a better noticer.
Yeah, so we live in a kind of information-rich society, which means noticing is now at a poverty level. I want to show this video, except just to make sure, I'm going to stop share for a minute and start it again and make sure I have these things clicked. And think about yourself as Sherlock Holmes. There's a crime that's been committed here, and you're going to have to pay attention and notice what's going on.
Clearly, somebody in this room murdered Lord Smythe, who, at precisely 3:34 this afternoon, was brutally bludgeoned to death with a blunt instrument. I want each of you to tell me your whereabouts at precisely the time that this dastardly deed took place.
I was polishing the brass in the master bedroom.
I was buttering his lordship's scones below stairs, sir.
Why, I was planting my petunias in the potting shed.
Constable, arrest Lady Smythe.
But how did you know?
Madam, as any horticulturist will tell you, one does not plant petunias until May is out. Take her away.
That's right, madam.
It's just a matter of observation. The real question is, how observant were you?
And action.
Clearly, somebody in this room murdered Lord Smythe, who, at precisely 3:34 this afternoon, was brutally bludgeoned to death with a blunt instrument. I want each of you to tell me your whereabouts at precisely the time that this dastardly deed took place.
I was polishing the brass in the master bedroom.
I was buttering his lordship's scones below stairs, sir.
Well, I was planting my petunias in the potting shed.
Constable, arrest Lady Smythe.
So again, a wealth of information creates a poverty of attention. We don't see what we're not looking for. And so here's the thing to do. What we see depends on what we look for, and we're going to do a little breakout session here. And what I want you to do is go look around. Hello?
I couldn't say anything.
Is there a problem?
I don't think so.
Okay, we're going to break out into some breakout rooms, and you have a task to do. And here's this quote: what we see depends on what we look for. And I'm going to give you a specific thing to look for. I want you to go around the environment that you're in and look for objects that have facial characteristics. And I've showed an example of 4 here. This top one, this was in our innovation lab. Students' backpack, they just plunked down there. And the next one was, I was just driving behind a truck and saw this and took a picture of it. The gas thing is outside of a company called Sonic in Portland, Oregon. We were waiting to go in. And the broom person was in a cleaning room at a girls' camp. So I took all these pictures, and what I want you to do is go look around your environment and either take pictures or grab any kind of thing that has facial characteristics. Okay, so we're going to go into the breakout rooms. You'll have about 7 minutes to explore. Come back together, share what you found, and then when we get back together as a group, each group will share 1 or 2 of their favorite facial expression images or objects. Any questions about that?
Bye. Breakout room. Have fun. Make good choices. All right, popcorn. Everybody's back.
Okay, let's talk about this for a minute. What did you learn?
To see things with fresh eyes or new eyes, so to look at things in a different way than we normally do.
Yeah, and I want to know, were you skeptical at the beginning that you could find what I asked you to look for?
Absolutely.
But you did find something, right?
Yes.
It's just what you were told to look for, then all of a sudden you see it. Somebody else have a comment? Harry, did you have something? You're muted.
I found a lot more than I thought I would find. It was interesting because, like you said, I hadn't paid attention to it before.
Yeah.
It's kind of like this little plug. I don't know if you can see it.
Yeah, yeah, there you go.
I mean, a tiny thing like this. And then I had this ball, which actually was like a face that was making noise also.
Yeah, so it's a face that talks to you, right?
Yeah.
Anybody else?
A combination, Laura Pinsky said it was harder than I thought it would be. And then Fern said you can see faces everywhere. And I think once you start looking, then you're like, oh.
Yeah, so that's kind of the idea is we see what we're told to see or trained to see. And once you have that, all of a sudden they seem to be way more prevalent than you thought.
I also would like to say that my partner and I, Chris, approached this slightly differently. So I took pictures, so I was very focused on the visual, and he found objects. So it was also very tactile for him,
Yeah.
which was amazing and a useful perspective.
Yeah, so when I talk to the students, I always talk to them, if you think about creativity as flexibility and fluency and novelty and elaboration. Elaboration is that camera work, to be able to take the picture and crop it to the point where you see the face clearly. And okay, anybody else have any thoughts? Does anybody have a face? We've had a couple share. Anybody else have a face they want to share with us? They found? Oh yeah, very good. Very good. Anybody else? When you show it, just call out your name or say something too so we get you up on the screen.
Laura, it won't work while your background's up.
Yeah.
I found these scissors
Oh,
that
go
also match up to my face.
Oh, that is awesome. That is awesome. Yep, that works.
And I decided my microphone looked very brainy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's nice that your microphone, if you look at that image, has ears, because that's what a microphone should have. A nose and a mouth and ears, and the brain on the top.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, anybody else?
Anyone else just seeing R2-D2 from Star Wars?
Yeah.
It's also interesting how cars have personalities according to the front end, where the two lights work as eyes.
Yeah.
And the smile in the middle. Some
Yeah,
others
so,
are more aggressive.
Yeah.
That's very much on purpose, as Margaret.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So,
intimidation.
When they designed the Mazda Miata, when the Japanese came to California to review the design, the designer was kind of concerned because all the presidents of Mazda were all frowning. They're all looking at the car and they're all, And so the designer says, "What's wrong?" And they were going, and they looked at the grill and it had the two eyes and the grill was a frown. And so the designer said, "Uh-oh." And so they changed it to change the grill from having a sloping upward lip to a sloping bottom lip. So it was a happy car. And so, yeah,
Toyota has a very aggressive look lately, especially the Lexus line.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Any other thoughts here? I'm going to go back to sharing screen here. So the idea is what we see depends on what we look for. So I hope this is true, that the hunt was more satisfying with the reward of a new awareness of what was previously invisible. Here's two cardboard boxes plotting to take over the copy room at the office. I love this picture. So I want to share a video with you. This is Tom Kelly.
About 10 years ago, we got approached by one of the largest oral healthcare companies in America, a company you've probably heard of called Oral-B. And they said, look, we'd like a new kid's toothbrush because ours is starting to get commoditized. It looks like a lot of kids' toothbrushes out there, and you can't have that. We want to be special, right? So we say, okay, we'll do this. We want to go out in the field and do some field research. And they're kind of not sure about that. Like, it's not rocket science. We're talking about kids brushing their teeth. How hard could that be, right? They would really like us to stop fooling around and start designing, right? But we want to go through this process, this observation process, because we think almost always you can spot opportunities. And so we go out, and we're on like the first day of observations, and we make a small discovery. The small discovery we make is that every kid's toothbrush in the history of the world has had the same implicit assumption. It's a logical assumption, it just isn't exactly right, which is the assumption always was parents have big hands, kids have small hands, and so when you want to make the kids' version, make it like the parents' brush, only smaller and skinnier. Perfectly logical until you go out in the field, until you actually watch humans, little tiny humans, brushing their teeth. And what you notice right away, you get a 5-year-old boy brushing his teeth, he's not holding his toothbrush in his fingertips the way mom and dad do, he's fisting it. He's holding it like this because he doesn't have the dexterity, he doesn't have the fine motor controls that his parents have, and so he's got to hold it like this. In fact, the other thing he does is he holds the brush too far up very frequently, and so he's punching himself in the face as he's trying to brush his teeth, and we solved that problem too. But the main thing was, came back in the field and said, uh-oh, kids don't need little skinny toothbrushes, kids need big fat toothbrushes, right? Let's make them big fat squishy toothbrushes. And you may have noticed, now every toothbrush company in the world makes these, but our client reports that after we made that little tiny discovery, out in the field, sitting in a bathroom watching a 5-year-old boy brush his teeth, they had the best-selling kids' toothbrush in the world for 18 months. So when you think about power, when you think about, credibility, if you could go out in the field and do that observation and come up with that finding, and your company, your organization was the best in its field for 18 months afterwards, would that be worth it? I think that would be worth it. And so that's this message about think like a traveler, be an anthropologist, use your powers of observation, have that part of your brain turned up as high as you can all along.
Okay, this is a quote from Jane Surrey, and I'm not going to read it to you because I'm guessing all of you can read, but the gist of it is just what Tom Kelly said, that this observation, we go out trained to look for things, will see opportunities that weren't previously evident, just like your faces and objects experience. So this is kind of an overall, we feel like understanding people is important in design, and the buzzword today is empathy. And we teach 3 tools, and we teach these 3 tools because they're simple yet powerful. The students can experience, just like this observation experience you just went through, they can see how this works. And so we do observation, look, we say look, do, and ask. So observe, immerse yourself, experience what people experience, and ask questions. Talk to people, do interviews, do all kinds of way to gather information. But for this presentation, we are just looking at the observation part of this understanding and empathy. So here's an example of observation leading to something. Creativity is seeing what everyone else has seen and thinking what everyone else has thought. Any idea what this image is representing and why it fits with this topic? Anybody have a thought?
Oh, you got lots of people who know this one.
Okay. Are they sharing it in their
Yeah.
in the chat.
Deb and Fern and Marianne and even your wing.
Okay. Yeah, this is in the 1940s. While hunting in the mountain, a Swiss engineer noticed the cockleburs stuck in his pants and his dog's fur. So everybody had probably noticed that, but he wanted to look a little closer, and this is what he saw as these little hooks on the end of this burr. And as you figured out, that was the precursor to the invention of Velcro. So it wasn't alien technology, as some have suggested. It was actually somebody just being observant and then using that observation to his advantage. Here's a different one. This is a guy named Paul DeMartini, and he worked for Hunt's, which was a company that made staplers. And what he noticed is that whenever he used a stapler, he usually picked it up and stapled paper. And he started to go around and just look at people in the office of a staple making company. And he just started to observe how people used a stapler. And after he had observed that people did this unusual behavior, not using the stapler like it was designed to be used, but in a different way, the company came up with this stapler. And the stapler was the most successful new product launch in Hunt's history. And of course, a lot of companies followed it. It matched what people actually did and what Paul DeMartini observed. So I'm going to give you some ideas about how to be observant. And so what to observe, just remember AEIOU. Observe the activity, the environments, the interactions, the objects, and the users. And then things to observe, and there's a longer list than this, but this is just a simple list that we can get started on. Adaptive behaviors, we'll talk about each of these. Deviant behaviors, behavior patterns, frictions, and pain points. And so we're going to talk about this for a minute. So look at this picture and think about this activities, environments, interactions, objects, and user. And if you can tell me about what you're seeing, either the activity, the environment, the interaction, the objects, and the users. What do you see?
We've got a lot of no place to sit, uncomfortable, kids bored, parents tired, burned out, sadness, kids using suitcase as pillow.
Yeah. So what's the environment?
Airport.
Right. And
delayed flight.
Yeah. So the activity is you mentioned a couple of them: bored, stressed, tired. What are the interactions?
Sylvia called out everybody's minding their own business, like nobody's
Yeah.
really looking at them.
Yeah. And so that's interesting that there isn't interaction. Everybody's kind of doing their own thing, even within the family. They're not connecting, and the people around them are not connecting. And the objects you'd see, what are the objects?
Large stuffed suitcases.
Yeah, a couple suitcases, and that's kind of the main thing. So here's what I would suggest, that observation is just a tool. It's fodder for the fire of creativity. It's just giving you stuff to use, some of your creative tools to develop ideas. And so if I look at this and I see the interaction is nil, they're bored, they're tired, no one's connecting in this airport with these objects of suitcases, then here's where it might lead. So this is kind of a play on words, a trope. Everybody's bored. Well, checkerboard. And so here's this suitcase that you can see here. And you can play checkers, lay this suitcase down in checkers. So it changes the interaction with the object. And the checkers have questions on them. And so within a family or within strangers, you can play checkers and stimulate a conversation. And so again, the result is interesting, but the observation or observations lead to this concept of how do I change interaction with the objects and the users in an environment. So anybody have a comment or thought about that? Okay, so here's a couple things just quickly here. When I'm in environments, I can look at my environment from a different perspective. And here's an experience that we like to do, and we're not going to take time to do it today, but if you go into an environment that you're comfortable with and observe that environment laying on the floor or trying to get your eyes at about 2 feet above the floor surface and look at that environment and see that it becomes, there's changes in the environment, it becomes different. And the same is true if you can get a step stool and go into an environment you're really comfortable in and stand on the step stool and look at that environment. And all of a sudden you see things that you haven't seen before. Usually you need to dust on the top of your bookcase or something like that. But it gives you a different point of view that changes that environment. So it's an interesting experience. But let's do this for a minute. We've already identified some things. So just look around you and identify the weirdest thing in the room. Just without leaving your seat, just looking around, what's the weirdest thing? And then tell us about it. I'm gonna stop sharing for a minute because I want to see if anybody, what they come up with. Beth already showed us her pig that even snorts at us. So I vote that's kind of weird. So
Fair.
Anybody else? Okay, Harry, what do you have there?
This thing that looks like a Martian, but actually it's a marker. It's a yellow
Oh yeah,
marker.
That's awesome. Deborah, what do you have?
I have a clamshell with a Snoopy drawn on it.
Okay, now there's a story behind that. What's it? Tell us the brief story.
My son and I and his friends in the beginning of COVID decided to color shells and stones and put them all around the neighborhood because all people could do was go for a walk so they could see things. new on the floor.
Okay, you're trying to cheer people up, right? In this uncheerful environment. Anybody else have? Laura, what do you have there?
This is a refrigerator magnet that somebody gave me a long time ago. And it's a voodoo doll, and I don't like it, and it's really ugly, but I'm really afraid to throw it away.
Yeah, because your life will turn into a disaster, right?
Yeah, I don't want bad juju, but I really don't like it.
Yeah, okay. Anybody else? Yeah, Renee, what?
So this is, and I love elephants. So this is a Lego elephant that my son made for me out of spare parts from one of his kits.
Yeah, awesome.
Trunk and the tusks and the ears.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, I think that meets the requirement. Anybody else?
I've got up on the top, there's a pig and a dolphin, and they hold notes, and they're magnets that fit on my filing cabinet.
Oh, that's awesome.
They
So
make me smile.
yeah, that's awesome. Anybody else?
I've got something pretty weird that I'm very proud of. Gonna have to move my laptop so I can show it, but I have this old TV right here that I found in the shed of the house that I moved into, and I managed to turn it into a second monitor that's currently connected to my MacBook.
Wow. Yeah, that is, I'm gonna say that is weird. Okay, anybody else? Okay, so if I was to ask you, what's the most interesting thing in the room? You know, it might be the weird stuff, might be the most interesting too. And if I said, what's something in your environment that brings you joy? How many of you it would be the weird thing also? Maybe not. Yeah, we know the voodoo doll is not. So anyway, again, the idea that we're prepped to look for things and see them. So I'm going to show you, go back to screen share again. And I don't know why it's starting over, but this will be a good review. No. So how about this image? This is we're wrapping up the idea of activity, environment, interaction, object, and user. Anybody can look at this and tell us maybe a little story. What are we observing?
Do a story. It's a kind of a cold day in the city, and this woman has been out running errands all day, and her bag is big and heavy, and suddenly she realized she hasn't eaten all day, and she's hungry. And so, but it's cold outside, so she has to stay wrapped up in her coat, and she's got, like, it's still COVID, so she doesn't want to go inside and eat. So she gets this sort of slice of pizza in a white paper bag, but she's all wrapped up in her coat, and she has to find a place to sit, and there's no real table, and she's kind of hunched over and shivering, and she's getting ready to eat her pizza, which is not the nutritious meal maybe she'd like to have before she picks up her heavy bag and goes home.
Okay, good. Anybody else have a story, either a variation on that or just want to add some details? Or
Her name is Barb. I know for a fact that her name is Barb.
Okay. And how old is Barb?
I'd say she's maybe 52.
Okay.
Give or take a couple hours.
Okay.
Looks like she has flowers in her bag. The pink wrapped look like flowers.
Yeah, I think there are some flowers in the bag. Why?
to make her space brighter.
Brighter. Any other thoughts?
She's going to visit someone in the hospital.
Yeah, maybe she's going to visit somebody in the hospital. I
I think she's at an airport.
So you think
I think
airport?
she's waiting for somebody to pick her up so she can go visit that person.
Okay.
It's her high school sweetheart. They reconnected over Facebook during COVID.
Okay.
And she
Any
can't
other?
remember, she can't remember if the gifts that she got for this, for him, a beautiful mustache comb, because he has a beautiful, with wax. And she can't remember if it's in this package or another package in the bottom of her bag.
Checking. Okay, good. So yeah, this is fun to do in front of a group of really creative people who can really see broadly. Okay, what else?
I think we're making an assumption that she's eating something.
Yeah.
And my gut feeling is that she's got a bag full of presents and she's checking to see where her next stop is going to be to give that present to somebody.
Yeah. Okay.
That's what I heard Yardena saying.
What?
That's what I heard Yardena referencing, that she was looking for her rose gift.
I thought maybe she dropped it and she's looking to see if it broke.
Broken, yeah.
Right.
Good.
Yeah, that could be also.
What else? Anybody else have a thought?
Well, what's interesting is this bag that she has, the red bag with the white design on it. It looks fairly upscale bag, and yet somehow, and she's dressed fairly well, I think.
Yeah.
And yet she's sitting in a kind of low-level wall at some place that is public transportation. I don't know if it's the airport or a subway station or a bus station. So the two things are a little bit in contrast with each other.
Yeah. Unique. So yeah, good insight. So I think if we're thinking about environment, I think you kind of nailed. We're kind of saying it's some kind of transportation place: airport, bus station, train station, subway. Any other thoughts?
She's just coming back. She's British. She's in London right now, and you can tell because of the black jacket. And so what she's doing is coming back from a little vacation from Spain. She took from France. She took that train that tunnels under the channel from France back to Great Britain, and that bag obviously looks posh European. That's how you know that she was in France. And so she's coming back and checking to make sure that everything is still there in that that sort of train station area, now that she's finally back in London.
Okay.
And I also am not sure that she is a she.
Okay.
Paul, the most interesting thing is the assumptions that we're all making by looking at the same picture.
Yeah.
And the filters we're using to translate it the way we think we see it.
Yeah, I appreciate that comment because it kind of fits in with seeing with new eyes. So we have to kind of break our frameworks and see things from a different point of view. And that's the purpose of this observation. So, we don't know the answer, but by looking at this picture and trying to observe it more carefully, we can make some assumptions. And some of those assumptions might not be correct, but some of them might be. But we can use what we observe to understand better. Okay. This is not an assignment for now, but I want you to think about this later. This is just an observation, fun thing to do. And I'd challenge you to try this. It's just a single object scavenger hunt. And it's just played for the fun of noticing, because I guarantee you, just like the faces, you don't see this stuff because you're not looking for it. So I have a picture of security cameras here. Just walk around looking for security cameras. And it doesn't have to be security cameras. It can be employee of the month plaques, stray shopping carts, traffic cones that are out of place, abandoned bike locks, hand-painted signs, cell phone towers. My personal favorite, and it's ongoing, starting to drive my wife nuts, is for those in the United States, Home Depot buckets. Those things are everywhere. And so I always call them out when I see them. So it's just an opportunity to kind of force yourself to be more observant in the environment that you're in. Okay. Here we've talked about these activities, environments, interaction. Now we're going to talk about things to observe, these bottom ones. So adaptive behaviors, I'm going to show you some images, but adaptive behaviors are where people will alter the purpose or context of things to meet their objectives. For designers like myself, this is the biggest clue that there's a problem with the design of something. So here's an adaptive behavior. Why do people do this?
Make it easier to clean.
Yeah.
Yeah, they can, they don't have to pull that thing out and scrub it. They can just pull the tinfoil off. It makes it easy to clean. And with a designer's mind frame, I would say you ought to have disposable trays that fit in there that you can pull in and out, that you don't have to take the time to wrap it. Now there's maybe problems with that, but this is the idea of adaptive behaviors. People have changed their environment. This is at a printer at Brigham Young University where they print huge documents, and the documents, sometimes they print overnight and the paper all ends up on the floor. So they modified the machine to keep the paper in a stack. So human modification of a piece of equipment to make it fit their purpose. We've all seen something like this, or the walkers that have tennis balls. Those are added by people to change the use of that product. And here's one that is a common one we see all the time, where people take grocery bags and put them over their bike seats. So if we ever do get rain in Utah, your seat won't get wet. So do you understand what I'm talking about with adaptive behaviors?
Yep.
Okay, so we're going to do the same thing now that we did with looking for faces. I want you to look at your environment and look for ways that you've modified your environment to meet your needs, to make it better, or maybe use things in an unusual way. And my guess is, because you're all creative people, you're going to be surrounded by this stuff. So we're going to go into breakout rooms. Beth set them up. We're going to do the same thing. You'll have about 7 minutes to look for adaptive behaviors, and then 3 minutes to kind of, and let's just, Beth, can we change to just do 7 minutes?
Yeah.
Because we've got a few enough people that we can have them just share in the larger group. Okay, so either bring the device or take a picture of it, a way to share adaptive behaviors.
James, you want to drop that into chat? Breakout room instructions, so that you can take it with you.
So are we sharing in the breakout rooms at all, or are we just looking and then coming back and sharing with the group?
You can, if you come back early, you can share in the breakout rooms, but we'll make it a little more open in the larger group to share. So the idea was you could share and then we could pick a few from the breakout rooms, but share together and then we'll get back in a larger group. Here's a warning that it says in the instructions there. This is not just fixing broken things, right? It's adapting. So go. Have
Breakout
fun.
room. Bye.
Have fun. Okay, there you go. That's an observation assignment, right?
Yeah, she was like 3 car, 4 car, 2 car, 2 car, no garage.
Double decker.
Okay, everybody's coming back. Anybody have anything they want to share? Let's see what you discovered. Adaptive behaviors.
I will. It's Renee. I have a lot of stuff in my office that I've adapted, like, you know, ways to raise my computer and other things.
Yeah.
But I wanted something that was a lot sturdier to hold my plant, my vase and plants, flowers back here, other than a step stool and a shorter stand that was really wobbly and scared me. So I was out thrifting and I found this lovely wooden CD holder. That is now a beautiful height for a plant stand.
Okay, very good.
The plant
That is awesome.
Good job. Adaptive behavior. You're going to make your environment work for you. Anybody else?
I've got one.
Yeah, let's see.
I don't know if you can see this very well. This is a whiteboard with a chair in front of it, and on the chair are all the dry erase markers and the erasers, because there is no tray.
Very good.
That's great.
That's great. Okay.
I have one.
Yeah, let's.
So I have one. So this is when we put an addition onto the back of our house. This was the powder room, and there was a window there. And we had to figure out what to do with it because it's an exterior wall. So we turned it into a bookshelf.
Okay.
Which is still removable should there be a leak from our roof and you have to get in behind it and get to the pipes or anything.
Okay. Adaptive behavior.
Paul, I've got one.
Yeah.
My wife and I actually eat raspberries quite a bit. And this is a very simple way of preventing mold by having a paper towel on the bottom of that plastic container. So we lay them out single file. We might use 2 plastic containers, but the paper towel absorbs, they don't get moldy, and they last twice as long. Just by that adaptation.
Nice.
Yeah, genius.
You have just changed my life for good.
Oh, mine too. I love raspberries.
Our raspberries are just coming on, so that's a great hack. That's you know, when we talk about adaptive behaviors, that's the designer term, but you can also call them life hacks, right? Okay, what do you got, Beth?
I have one.
Oh, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so we have recently started fostering 2 German Shepherds, my sisters, and so to keep them off of the couch, we bought one of those plastic runners that have the little spikies.
Oh,
so
yeah.
normally you would walk on the plastic runner, you would put it on a carpet and the spikes would hold it down. But if you turn it upside down and put it on the couch, the little spikies keep the dogs from wanting to lay on the couch.
That is awesome. That's adaptive behaviors at its finest because you've adapted the use to adapt to a different use. So levels of adapting. Anybody else?
Laura Pinsky has one.
And I undid my background so I could show it. So I don't know if you can, where's me? Can you see this?
Yeah,
Can you
yeah.
So it's hard to explain what it is, but I have an exercise. Sorry?
I know what those are. Those are shower curtain.
Those
holders,
are shower
right?
curtain things, but this thing is an exercise machine that has a handle like this. And when I exercise, can't keep track of how many reps I do. right? So this is on, and every time I do a rep, I take the shower curtain thing and move it to the other side of the handle. And when they're all on this side, I've done 10 reps and then I move them back. Because otherwise I can't remember, am I on rep 4 or rep 6? Or so that's what I did.
Okay, that's awesome. That's one of the drawbacks of being a highly visual person. We don't do math very well, right? Like counting.
It's actually, I am actually an engineer by training, so I actually do math really well, but my brother says I can't do arithmetic. I have to take off my shoes to count to 20.
Yeah, very good. Okay.
I have a bungee cord and there's a hook screwed into my wall, and I hook this on my doorknob because my office door won't stay open.
Okay, very good. That's an adaptive behavior.
And I'm gonna put it back or I'll lose it.
Yeah. Anybody else? Okay, I'm going to share screen again. And,
oh, there's a question. Is repurposing an adaptive behavior?
So it can be. And I always, so with my students, when we talk about repurposing, we talk about 3 terms: recycle, which is a material level; revalue, which is to take something that's lost its value and add value to it; and repurpose, something that has value in one arena that we move it to another arena where it has a different purpose. So the example of the mat with the little spikes on it, that could be a repurpose, as well as an adaptive behavior. The adaptive behavior is keeping the dogs off. The repurpose is using the mat for a different purpose than it was designed for. Yeah. James, did you have a comment?
Oh, I was just thinking, like, the other good example would just be the TV that I turned into a computer monitor.
Yeah, yeah. So that's an adaptive behavior, but you're also repurposing that object. So the question, you know, is it repurposing? Yes, can be.
What was the third one you said, Paul? You said repurpose, revalue, and
Yeah, recycle is a material level, like, you know, you grind up bottles to reuse them.
Right. Yeah.
And okay, we're going to go back here to share screen. And so here's a little, you know, here's these adaptive behaviors. Here's a student works for Little Giant Ladder, and he sent these to me saying, you know, here's his industry, all the adaptive behaviors that he went out and observed. These modifications to step ladders, most of them holding tools or customizing their caps. So here's the product he came up with, is just this toolbox that mounts at the top of the ladder or could hang on any of the rungs. So the idea is adaptive behaviors in themselves are, it's just fodder for creativity. I see something that there's a need, and so I can use that. So here's a thing to do. And we're not going to break out for this. We'll just have a little short conversation. But take one of your adaptive behaviors and let's just brainstorm for a minute. Let's say here's the whiteboard, that you have a chair in order to make the markers and the eraser close so they're accessible. What's the design solution to that adaptive behavior? Or just pick one of your adaptive behaviors and think about a few ideas that you could do to make that adaptive behavior an actual product. Does anybody just, we won't take a lot of time on this, but anybody just have a comment or a thought?
Well, you can take one of these bathroom shelves and put it on the wall next to the white wall And that will serve as a place where you put all the items that you need,
Yeah.
pens and pencils and all that.
Go to Bed Bath & Beyond, buy one of those stick-on
Right.
things for the shower, and stick it on there and hold all your
Right.
equipment. So here's this adaptive behavior of this bike seat thing. And here's kind of a brainstorm of ways to solve the problem. And a nice variety of, a way to generate power to heat the seats to dry them, or a super slick otter skin surface so that sheds the water. The diaper idea that the water's sucked away from the surface. This little shield here that you can pull up over the seat when you park it, or this little dispenser on the back of shower caps that you can put on, or this spring seat that you just boing and it shakes all the water off, or a dump seat. They're just trying to brainstorm solutions to that adaptive behavior. Here's this wire seat where there's nothing for the water to stick to. So, why is this image so? I'm kind of sharing this image to say, you gather data, but then you've got to do something with the data, right? And this is just images of photographs that the students have taken for a project, and then trying to configure that data into something that's meaningful. And here's an example for a project for a car company that does car accessories. And we gave all the students, and this kind of dates when this was done, but disposable cameras, 36 exposure disposable cameras, to go out and take pictures of adaptive behaviors in cars. And we had thousands of images, and then we tried to do affinity diagrams to organize them. And we organized them into these 5 categories. And so the adaptive behavior, the information that then we could organize, led to, here's the standard things that you would use as a accessory to a car. And we gave them these little category names, which has meaning, so that students could use that as a design tool. So we talked about adaptive behaviors. Here's deviant behaviors. And the definition of deviant behaviors is when we interact unexpectedly with things we encounter. So we won't get into that, but you can see people deviate from the typical use of stuff. And when I'm in the class and I'm talking to students about this, I sit on the desk that's in front of the class. And that's a deviant behavior. A desk isn't made to sit on, yet I'm doing it. And so that's kind of deviant behaviors. And here's a student who kind of recognized this funny pattern after the Hurricane Katrina. This looks like a deviant behavior. Somebody is marking up the streets and walls and of all the city. Anybody know what that's about?
Utilities?
They'd already checked it for people, right?
Yeah. So all the first responders go in and will mark what they find in a building. And the problem was all the first responders, the different agencies, all had different codes. And then people will also, this has a help that's not done by a first responder, but by a person who needs help. So the student came up with this idea. The project was for Motorola, of an RFID tag printer in this radio, which is standard for first responders. So instead of tagging all these buildings, they just put the RFID tag, and the first responder just drives by the building, and the RFID tag will tell them verbally what the organization found there. And so an idea to save lots of time. So here's behavior patterns, just consistently repeated things. And so here's a designer observing, designing treadmills, observing the use of treadmills. And there's a couple patterns that were noticed. One is everybody brought the same thing to the party: a towel, a water bottle, their keys, a cell phone, and a magazine or a book. That was a consistent behavior. And the other consistent behavior was how they started this up. They got on the treadmill, they would enter information into the console, and the tread would start turning, but they had the feet on the side while the tread's starting to turn. And then once they entered that information, they would put their book or magazine in place and start to walk and or run and read the magazine. Then in about 20 minutes into the exercise, they would move the magazine aside and look at something on the controls. How far have I gone? How long have I gone? What are the calories, etc. And so that was just an interesting behavior pattern. And just to be quick about this, there was also an adaptive behavior. This little bent piece of plastic you could put over the console to make a magazine rack. But the designer designed a console with a magazine rack in the middle because it was used primarily for a magazine rack and only secondary for the controls. And there were some other things that came into play in this observation. And so here's this design of the treadmill. But so in creativity, if you get a patent on something, I mean, in design, if you get a patent, that shows your creativity. It's novel because you can get a patent, and it's useful because you can get a patent. So this is the patent for the center console magazine rack. It was the first time it was done in the exercise industry, and it had a ripple effect through all exercise equipment. Of course, now it's gone away. Why?
Watching TV.
It's a video screen now. Same idea, but now it's a video screen.
Paul, there was a question.
Yeah.
Why is using a desk for sitting on deviant versus adaptive like a way to raise your height?
So we always think of deviant as a negative, but it's just going away from the norm. So it could be an adaptive behavior. It's just what I have available, but it could be deviant. So yeah, good question. So here's frictions. Frictions are interactions that inhibit participants from intuitively achieving their goals. And the best example of this, I think, is, lines. Lines are kind of necessary, right? But they are frictions in our getting things done. And frictions can be positive. And I just put this in at the last minute, but I want to share it with you. Anybody know what this is?
Looks like the Western Wall or something.
Actually, this is the Western Wall is on the side here, but these are the southern steps going up to the Temple Mount. The designers designed these to be uneven in height and in step because they wanted people, when they were going to the temple, to slow down, to approach in a reverent, which would mean your head's down because you got to look at the stairs. And so the friction was meant to improve the situation. So there are good frictions, things that inhibit us. You know, every time you want to delete something from your phone, it asks you, are you sure you want to delete it? That's a friction. It's trying to help you to not make a mistake. But most frictions are bad. And we want to see frictions so we can help alleviate it to some degree. And so I'm going to go really quick here because we're kind of through. This is a scanner that kind of helped the teller to move people through, because the scanner was not only a stationary scanner, but also a hand scanner. And pain points is the last thing, uncomfortable interactions. This was with a company designing free weights. And this weight received 3 patents, because what the designer noticed is getting the weight on the bar was difficult, especially for somebody who's lifting a lot of weight, but they're using their knee to lift it. They can't seem to get it on there. Handles for carrying it. Now that's pretty common now, but this was a patent, so that was the first time. And then this chamfer to allow them to be picked up easily. So this was the best-selling set of weights in the company Weider's history, and it was just from observation. And so pain points, you know, I always encourage the students to carry a little notebook and write down things they observe that are pain points. Okay, I'm sorry I cut that short, but did you get that? So here's a product device that, just like Velcro was observation of nature, allowed them to create this device that would pick up anything. So this is the last thing I would say is when we go out doing observation, we have to notice things, but also what's absent, what's not there. And sometimes what's not in the environment can tell us as much as what is. So that is my presentation. Seeing with new eyes, being more observant of the environments around us.
Paul,
yes.
There's a question about the difference between pain points and friction, like waiting in line. Why is waiting in line a friction and not a pain point?
Well, so a friction is something that slows down the process, right? And so I guess if you were, a friction can become a pain point if it becomes unusually tedious. So a super long wait in a line moves from a friction to a pain point. But a typical grocery store, you know, I would say Walmart on any other day but Saturday is a friction. On Saturday, for me, it becomes a pain point. I think about, yeah, go ahead.
CPSI in person, one of the things that we looked at as a pain point for years was the lunch line, because the line was obnoxiously long. Yeah. And so we took as many steps as we could to shorten that line, but the friction is still, you can only enter one at a time because the woman has to scan you.
Yeah. Well, so that's, I think you're right. That is a friction at times, but then while you're talking about it, it becomes a pain point because it becomes difficult. And that's where we start to say, how do I fix this? And, you know, there's a whole philosophy on queuing or lines. And this is not, you know, following what we talked about here, but unoccupied time feels longer than occupied time. So if you can give them something to do, that's what Disneyland figured out, is when you're standing in line, they're entertaining you. And so people want to get started, just feel like there's movement. If it's stopped, the line is stopped, that becomes a pain point. But if it it's progressing and they can feel a progression, then it becomes a friction and it's more tolerable. Uncertain waits are longer than known. So that's why all the fast food restaurants have put up the displays to say, here's where you're at. Paul is going to be served in a few minutes and I can see myself getting closer to the top, and it's not so painful. It's that's helping the friction. Unexplained waits are longer than explained waits. So over the PA, we're sorry, but you're going to have to wait. Okay, because of this. And unfair waits are longer than fair waits. Everybody's experienced this at the airport. When the people who have a lot of money get to get on first, right? They don't have to wait in line as long. And so you say, well, that's not fair. Whatever. And then anxiety makes waits feel longer. If I'm really pressured because I'm in a very big hurry, my friction might go from a friction to a pain point. So, okay, long answer to a short question, but good question. Any other questions or comments or observations?
No, but everybody's experienced what you're talking about. You're like, yeah, I'm happy if I know that I'm fifth in line rather than.
Yeah. What's going on? I don't know.
Paul,
Or-
thank you. Oh,
I was just saying poor Yardina, who is 40th on tech support, which is much farther away from 5th.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
thoughts and prayers, Yardena. Thoughts and prayers. Paul, thank you so much for this session. This was fantastic. I know I'm going to see smile faces and bad design now. You're gonna be looking for it. Don't worry though, everyone. We still have one more session left today. Create to educate. How might student book writing reimagine learning? And then tomorrow, it's a whole new day. So I'd say don't go anywhere, but do go. But like, come back and have a little lunch, a little snacky snack. Maybe go outside, walk around your house, get some fresh air, and then I will see you back here at 4 o'clock Eastern time. Until then, be creative and see things with new eyes.